Trust him all in now, 'cause he's the light. He'll lead your way through darkest of times. He'll never let you go, and he'll be there for you, and he'll be there for you. He'll never bring you down or leave you alone. Trust him all enough, 'cause he's the light, and he'll lead your way through darkest of times. He never lets you go, and he'll be there for you. Be there for you. He'll be there for you. Be there for you, and he'll be Look at him, your Savior is there. He's the Lamb of God, our Savior, Redeemer. He's alive. He took all your fears. He never let you go. Even in the seas that you drown, and nowhere you can run, I keep your eyes on the prize with a flawless mind. Even in the seas that you drown, and nowhere you can run, keep your eyes on the prize with a flawless mind. Even in the seas that you drown, and nowhere you can run, keep your eyes on the prize with a flawless mind. He'll be there for you. 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 He'll be there for you.
Now, Yeva lives in Yerevan. Ooh, that's a nice name. Many of you will say, where's Yerevan? Well, Yerevan is the capital city of Armenia. It's a small country. It's part of the South Caucasus. There are three countries which don't have much to do with one another, really. There's Georgia, there's Armenia, and there's Azerbaijan. The three three very distinct countries, but they compose a geographic area called the South Caucasus. Yerevan, the capital city of Armenia, looks out over the border with Turkey, a border that you can't cross there because of the long-standing enmity between the two countries, between Turkey and between Armenia. And without getting into either the rights or wrongs of anything, but there was a genocide in which the Turks did away with a lot of Armenians. And yet, all three of those countries have they punch beyond their weight. Almost when you're in Moscow, you can talk to a lot of people and they'll say, I'm either Armenian or I'm Georgian. I worked at Russia Today television in its early days. In fact, I helped start it up. And the executive editor, Margarita Simonian, said one day, "Oh yes, I'm Armenian. I come from Armenia." One of their star performers, who actually makes it onto Hello and so on, she really is gorgeous and very statuesque and model-like, is Sophie Shevardnadze, and her grandfather was Eduard Shevardnadze, who was one of the reformers in the Gorbachev era, and was the president of Georgia, and was hounded out by a group of dissidents. Sophie is now one of Russia's top television personalities, and she's a great personality around the world. And she is welcomed, of course, partly for her political background, but partly because of her beauty and her elegance, into many parts of the universe. But she was originally Georgian. So the South Caucasus has really delivered, particularly in media, people well beyond its punching bag weight. And of course, those of you who are savvy will know that Stalin was Georgian. So it's an interesting part of the world. And Yerevan itself is small, but delightful. You cannot walk down any street without looking across into the border into Turkey and seeing Mount Ararat. It's a magnificent mountain. It always got some snow on it. But the interesting thing is that it has it's where the Ark, Noah's Ark, is supposedly found. They've certainly found some sort of a large vessel, and it's said that was Noah's Ark, which managed to get the animals and Noah and his family away from the floods. Well, interesting. But also Armenia, as one man there grumbled to me one day, "Oh, you've got to offer a churches. Don't know why the tourists come here." Well, first of all, the landscape is fairly raw, but it's fascinating. And as you go around, you'll find, because it was in the front line against the Muslim hordes, and I say that without any ethnicity or religious bias whatsoever, it's a historical thing, is when they attacked Armenia, the Armenians had to go to ground. The Armenians were the first country ever to make Christianity their state religion. So as a consequence, they were always in the firing line from other religious groups, other religious nations. But that what makes them so fascinating. You can find cathedrals hewn into rock. You can find churches up on the bench. In one particular case, we stopped by at a church, and they actually have a cafe there, and you can sit outside and have a magnificent salad and steaks and so on, done in a different way than you would find in either New York or London or here in Lewis. But it is a fascinating country and worth going to. And Yerevan itself, being so small, is neat. There is in the centre a long avenue of trees in which you can sit out in the summertime, and you can drink beer or whatever till the small hours. And it has what is the equivalent of the Vatican there, the centre of the Armenian Church. And if you bother to actually go and look around, you'll find all sorts of things that you probably won't find elsewhere. They make their own bread, and you can find farmers and smallholders with their orchards and so on, and they bring in the neighbours. So they have a deep pit in which they stoke up a fire, and they make a sort of a pancake bread. And in the case that I watched, there was an elderly lady, 10 times older than me, if that's possible, and she put her hands almost near into the fire to slap these pancakes against the wall of the fire chamber, and then would haul it out with a little stick and so on. And what they did was they stored it, and then in the winter when they needed bread, if they add water, it turns into bread, and they're able to store a lot that way, and they make it themselves. God only knows if she slipped. I can imagine that half her arm would go, but they don't slip. They have got so used to doing it. They are very skillful. There is a church dedicated to a Roman lady who was the first to announce Christianity in Armenia, and those who didn't want to see Christianity in 400 or 500 AD take over the country actually put her to death, but because it embraced Christianity in about 600, then she has become an icon, a saint, if you like, to Armenians. The Armenian language is quite different to anything else that you've ever seen. Its writing and its vocabulary, and it's almost impossible to learn and to pronounce. And that's why Yeva's sister is if I wanted to say it, I would have to say something like artificial, and she very rightly decided it, for her non-Armenian friends, her name was too difficult, so she changed it to Star Jackson. It's rather clever, really. So Star Jackson writes the lyrics for her sister. So the lyrics she just heard were written by Star, and a lovely family they are, and a lovely country Armenia is. And if, when the lockdown is over, if you decide that perhaps you're looking for somewhere different, go to Armenia. It's different, both in the interior and the exterior. I'm a great fan of the country. I wish I could just pop on a plane and go back. Will I ever see it again? I don't know. I'd like to. Anyway, musings of travel that you won't get anywhere else. And I suppose anybody who listens to any part of this for any length of time will realise that this isn't a bit like most radio stations. It is quite different. Now, there's something here called Mr. Sunnyface, and we're 43 minutes in. So let's have a go at Mr. Sunnyface. Well, that was sort of sunny, wasn't it? Yeah.
I quite